NutraCast.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
There's a change happening in the way we live, the way we work, the way we spend our money and make our decisions. We are evolving to be more conscious in our actions in a way that serves the world and makes it a better place. Welcome to the Ethical Evolution. The Ethical Evolution podcast is brought to you by Ethical Change Agency. I'm Bindi, I'm the founder, and my mission is to help ethical entrepreneurs and holistic healers to find their voice through spiritual coaching and podcasting. I'm honoured to bring you the stories of those who create change through healing, kindness, innovation, purpose, and spirit. Understanding that to create collective change, we need to be the change. It all begins with us. Hey, before we get into this episode, I just wanted to let you know that you can now grab my album of guided meditations. It's called Sourced by Spirit, and it's on all streaming platforms, including Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Tidal, YouTube Music, and many more. There's 11 guided meditations ranging from 4 minutes through to 10 minutes to help you reset your mind and your body at any time. Okay, now let's get on with the show. After serving in 2 combat tours in Afghanistan as a Marine Corps officer, Susannah Stokes experienced a spiritual awakening that changed her life forever. Since then, she's dedicated her life as an energy priestess and embodied consciousness guide. She's served dozens of people in one-on-one and group ceremonies, guiding them in their own spiritual awakening process. She co-founded House of Embodied Metamorphosis, a 508c1a faith-based organisation that utilises the Metamorphosis Method and a community-cultivated strain of psilocybin, known as Trinity, to facilitate powerful personal transformations through retreats and coaching programs. This episode is like no other on the Ethical Evolution, despite its content. The energetic connection formed through our conversation reached an all-time high, without the psychedelics, as you'll hear. Welcome, Susannah, to the Ethical Evolution.
Hi, Bindi. It's so great to be here.
Now, for those people who don't know who you are and what you do, can you go ahead and tell us?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, I help people to facilitate the remembering of who they are through consciousness exploration in our organization, Metamorphosis Ventures, and then our 508c1a, which is a faith-based organization called House of Embodied Metamorphosis. And I came to that through my own spiritual awakening after serving in the military and a couple of combat tours to Afghanistan.
There's a lot to unpack there, Susannah. So let's back up the truck a bit and let's go to now you were in the Marines. Can you tell us your experience there and what led you to your spiritual awakening and what you do now?
Yeah. You know, Bindi, it's so interesting because the more I speak about this journey and the more I also interact with other veterans, the more I realize that the spiritual shift from warrior to what I would consider now myself to be a priestess is actually not so odd. There's a lot of overlaps. There's a lot of things that are in common. And I started my early life desiring to be a leader in the world. And my father was in the military, and every man in my family was in the military. So there was definitely a legacy. And a part of my ego saw what society wanted for me, which was to go into the military. And at the same time, I always remember, I always say that I was kind of the hippie in the military because I remember deciding between the Peace Corps and the Marine Corps, which seemed completely opposite to most people. But I had these two sides of me that were always pulling. And so I went to what we call the Naval Academy in the United States. And that led me into being an officer in the Marine Corps. And after being in war twice, I began to just look around me, and actually my whole idea of God and anything bigger started to crumble. There was this full disillusionment and this full shedding of who I once was and all of these ideas that my father and my family and the people around me had placed in me and said, these are the important things, and this is how God works, and this is how the universe works. And everything started to fall apart. So what that led me to was a deep exploration of myself to try to remember, well, why am I here then, right? Because obviously war doesn't work in the ways that we think it should. And I remember questioning myself and just thinking, like, how could any greater thing allow such trauma and sadness to happen? And that led me to psychedelics. And I ended up getting out of the military, out of the Marine Corps, and I'd been trained in all the discipline, every last bit of discipline and strength and courage and resilience that you can imagine, because it is definitely one of the top training programs in the world. And what that led me to was this desire to just be as free and creative as I could be. So naturally, I went to the corporate world, which has its own elements of militarism and structure. But while I was there, I was in the Bay Area. I was in San Francisco. And a lot of people know that San Francisco is a hub of creativity. It's a hub of exploration, and it's a place where plant medicines are not seen like they are in the typical world, where drugs are medicine and medicine are drugs, right? So there is more of a spirit of exploration. And I had all of the stories and the narratives around what psychedelics were and what they were going to do to me, and lots of fear around them. But because they were so normalized, I had my first experience with LSD, and I watched the trees breathe.
Wow.
And I remembered what it felt like to be part of nature. I grew up on a farm in Georgia, and I had this deep remembering that I was one with everything. And that began to piece back together what my idea of God was.
Wow. That's incredible. Now, we've had some guests on the show who are specialists in psychedelics as well. And the transformations and the true healing that can happen in that space, I think is really just starting to take off around the world. I know in the States it's far more advanced than here. I know it's starting to get more explored down here. But, just from what you've said there, it's almost as though the filters that we have on ourselves between who we are as a human and nature and the world just strip away. Would you say that's been your experience?
Oh, I love that description of it, right? The filters, because we talk a lot about masks in our work and also shedding the veil, right? Because, and I imagine you've explored this with some of your other guests as well, but a lot of us have these layers that we have built up that create filters of how we see the world. And it's how we get reflections from the people around us, right, to help us grow. But also those filters can blur our reality, and they can cause us to, what I would say is like, forget the essence of who we are, which really is love, and all things around us are love. And also to forget that we are in connection, that actually, even though I look like a physical, tangible being, I am actually not separate from you. And psychedelics bring us into that space of connectedness, of oneness, of sort of like, it's like a mushing together of everything that actually feels really comfortable and very natural to us, because we're being reminded of our spirit.
And what message I just got through then was, it's like healing is stripping away those layers, isn't it? Really. And getting to the core of who we are. But with psychedelics, so there's obviously more than LSD, psilocybin, a whole bunch of different things out there. What are the differences between some of them and the impacts that they have?
Yeah. Every single plant medicine is a little bit different in its consciousness. I think of it like herbs or people, right? Like humans. When you meet a different human, or even a different animal, each animal is going to have its own unique energy, its own unique lesson that it teaches you, right? Even in our own homes, we have cats and dogs, very different personalities, even across those species. So the same thing with plant medicines is you have ones that will take you down into deeper, more shadowy places, and then others that will bring you up into more light spaces. All of them do a combination of that. But I would say at Metamorphosis, we primarily work with psilocybin and a community strain that we cultivate called Trinity. And then we can even get deeper down into the sub layers of it. But psilocybin to me is, first of all, the oldest of all of the medicines. And so I love that because it's been around and it's been building its consciousness for billions of years. We literally started 40 million years ago with humans starting to, eat these in the dung piles of the creatures they were following. So they've been building their consciousness for a long time. And that's why psilocybin can activate what I call the full energetic system, the full energetic body. And psilocybin, because it's an earth-born medicine, it's very close to the planet. It's also a detoxifier, and it basically turns death into life. So it goes into our system and tends to focus on the lower energy centers, especially some of the pain and the difficulty there, the root, the sacral, down in these areas where we hold grief and anger and some of the denser emotions, and it starts to kind of eat away at it. And psilocybin is known by some of, especially the Mazatec people and some other indigenous peoples, as the holy children, because it has a very childlike energy. And sometimes when you're sitting with psilocybin, you'll hear it like giggle, or it kind of makes jokes with you. So it's got this very childish energy. LSD is actually from a mushroom. So originally it was synthesized from the ergot fungi, which is a type of mushroom, a fungi that grows on wheat. And that medicine, because it has a more synthesized, humans essentially pulled it out from this fungi into LSD from LSA. It has a slightly more human-like and also more structured, almost masculine way of operating, which is, I would say, why some, for example, software engineers and people who were working in technology like to microdose with LSD, because it activates these like upper energy centers, which are really focused in the mind. And that's very powerful. And then I'll speak to two more, which is First is ayahuasca, and she is just a deeply powerful medicine. And she's actually one of the newest medicines that has arrived to the human consciousness. And she's known as grandmother, which is kind of ironic that she's like the new one, but she's also has this kind of ancient, older energy. But she arose from the Amazon, and essentially shamans were guided to blend two plants together from different areas of the Amazon, actually, which is what's so incredible about it. And when brewed into the ayahuasca brew, ayahuasca, I think, at least for the past 150 years, she's really been worked with toward clearing the shadows in our being. And she works very deeply in trauma and also physical body healing. She can take you into those lighter, more galactic, even cosmic spaces, even heavenly. But that's her specialty. And the last one I'll speak about is San Pedro. Pedro, oh, how I love San Pedro. He is grandfather, and he is sort of the opposite energy. If there were two plant medicines that would get married, I would say it's ayahuasca and San Pedro, because San Pedro Huachuma is a cactus, and he has a softer energy than ayahuasca. She can sometimes, like I say, like beat you with a shoe until you get the lesson. But San Pedro tends to take you in waves and to open your heart, and sort of like a grandfather taking you on a walk and saying, let me just show you the ways of the world. Let me give you some wisdom that might assist your journey. And that for me is very, very powerful and potent, and can also bring you into deep spaces of ancestry and lineage trauma healing.
That is fascinating. Susannah, I just learned so much about psychedelics I have never known in my life. Like, mind blown. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad that could be helpful to you.
Now, a couple of things came through there for me. One was, again, we've had a lot of guests that have a shamanic background. Please excuse my accent, because my friends in the States say I say that funny. So so there seems to be linkages between shamanic practices and psychedelics. Am I right?
Most definitely. And I will also, offer some clarity that the shamanistic lineage is a very specific lineage. That is a way of operating that often works with the elements and the directions, and tends to be based in South and Central America. There are I actually believe that the original shaman lineage came from Russia, if I'm not mistaken, but I am no expert. And over the last, 100 to 200 years, it's really been dominated by the masculine, and it tends to be a more masculine energy. Also, the shamanistic lineage is working in the under realms, the lower realms, right? So some of those shadow work, so that we can then come into the light. But in a broader sense, there are highly spiritual facilitators and people who follow different spiritual lineages that work with psychedelics, because they connect us with spirit. And it could be through shamanism, for example. It could also be, like I mentioned before, the Mazatec people, and Maria Sabina. She was a very well-known, she wasn't a shaman, but she was definitely a facilitator and a guide for these medicines, and had her own practice of, and had her own lineage, I would say, right? She actually founded a lineage. So there are many different angles from which we can approach this, but I do find that when selecting a guide, or if you're drawn to having a guide, I find that the spiritual element is something that is absolutely critical, because whether you're looking at it from a more earthly perspective, right? I want to go and connect with the earth and the trees and the rocks and the, this whole planet that we come from, Or I'd like to have an experience that's a little more angelic. And I'd like to work with someone who tends to be like a priestess of that type of work, heavenly work, right? Works in the angels and the spirit guides and things like that. Some of these have lineages, some of them don't. And these days we're all birthing new ones. But I would say, for example, I work in the Isis Sophia lineage, and also the lineage, the Rosicrucian lineage, which is that of the Holy Grail. So a little bit of that Christ consciousness energy that comes in, because it's part of my ancestry. But it's a great question because I think that without a spiritual layer in your ceremony, something might feel a little bit incomplete. But it's up to you which spiritual practice you want to, dive deeper into through these medicines.
Which kind of leads me to, I think we really need to have a guide for this kind of thing. We shouldn't really be doing it on our own unless we are very skilled in that space. And I have heard from others that if you don't have a proper guide, you could actually do some damage.
Life is hard, but finding a really great podcast makes the days go by so much easier. Hi, my name is Blue Telusma. I'm a writer, an emotional intelligence coach, and the host of Humanize with Blue Telusma, a podcast where we believe that when you humanize everyone in the room, a great conversation is almost guaranteed. Join us every week here on Electricast as me and my guest co-hosts unpack big topics and interview even bigger personalities with a sense of humor and a dash of mischief. If you're looking for a new best friend in your head, we've got you covered.
Electricast.
I'm a believer in guides because I am one. And I also began the ceremonial exploration of these medicines with guides as well. While I did have a few experiences recreationally, I found myself desiring to have someone who had explored these medicines spiritually and ceremonially and had some sort of structure around them. And I'm very glad that I did it that way, because what I found was there was a deeper place that I could go with them. And if I had tried to go there on my own, the likelihood is I would have gotten stuck. And this is what a lot of people would call a bad trip. And I don't really believe in, quote, bad trips. I just believe in incomplete trips, where you approach an emotional block or an energetic entity or something that is in your system or in your history or in your memory that you don't actually have the tools to move through. And with a guide, chances are you're always going to have some element, or they will have an element of a tool or a resource or some sort of support that will be able to reflect back to you how to move through that thing, especially if you're selecting carefully and intentionally for your particular needs. And I believe that a lot of the trauma that happened even in like the 60s and 70s, where you hear a lot of people talk about, oh yeah, I had like a really bad journey while I was at a concert with my friends, like a live music thing in the 60s or in the 70s or in college. And I just didn't want to go back to it. It just, it scared me and I didn't want to try it again. We have, I would say there's a good percentage of the folks that come to our retreats and work with us who have had some sort of difficult experience because it was completely unguided. And the second thing that a guide can do is they can help you with the dosage and the environment, like matching the dosage. So we talk about in the psychedelic world, especially in the therapeutic psychedelic world, setting, and dosage. And set is mindset, right? So it's the intention that you're going into the work with. And then setting is the environment that you're in. And if you have an intention to do real emotional, deep healing, don't take 2 grams of mushrooms when you're going to go see Coldplay. Don't do it. that experience will not go well. And then it won't go as planned. Let's say that it won't match your expectations. And then and then beyond that, find the dosage based on the intention and the environment that really fits together. And a guide can help you with all of that.
And it makes it really purposeful, doesn't it? Like you go into it with a purpose, and it also gives you that safety that you can actually let go and fully experience it, which, if you've got your guard up as you go into it, that could also limit your experience as well, couldn't it?
I love now, especially now after I've done it many times, full surrender. I just love it. It's such a nourishing thing to our hearts and souls and minds and bodies to be able to be fully held by another person and by a community or by the medicine. There are many ways to surrender, right? You can also surrender even to your own guides, but it starts by surrendering and being held by another person. And that feeling alone is so worth having a guide.
Even without the drugs.
So worth it. Yeah, exactly. Like just go to them and be held, right? Be held in that space. We're all getting more accustomed to and normalized around therapy, right? And having therapists and speaking about our challenges with each other and with experts, because they genuinely know how to hold you through those things. And so why wouldn't we do the same thing in psychedelics, right? And especially in this space where you actually do end up becoming, especially with psilocybin, you match the energy of the medicine. So often you end up like a small child and you go into that deep space of inner child. And if you don't have a mom or dad around that's watching out for you, you might find yourself getting into some mischief.
That's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. Now, Susannah, I had a little sneak peek at your website, which is gorgeous, by the way. And you do something called Neuro Reiki. Tell me how that's different from normal Reiki.
Well, thank you for asking, and thank you for your compliment on the website. We've been working on it for a long time, and I will tell my co-founder, Ashley, because she led that project.
I've worked in digital for 20 years, by the way, so.
Well, then that is a huge compliment from you. And it's very important and precious to me to be able to share the depth of the intention of the work that we do at Metamorphosis through visual, through the visual of it. To answer your question around Neuro Reiki started because I worked through the different layers of becoming a Reiki master in the traditional lineage of Usui Reiki. And I deeply love that lineage. It's a very powerful energy healing modality, and really hasn't been around for very long, which is kind of wild. It's really only about 100 years. But what I noticed was that energy flowed through me a little differently, and that there was other layers to it that I started to feel in my body. And at Metamorphosis, we do a lot of things that are really focused on heart intelligence. And I have seen a lot of the lineages from before ours in the last, 100 to 200 years still be very mind and head based, right? Especially in energetic channeling. So we focus on channeling through the top chakra, the crown, and then down through the root. And what I found was energy flowed through me, yes, there, but it really centralized and then moved through my body from my heart. And it layered with my nervous system. So what Neuro Reiki essentially does is it layers consciousness, chi energy from source and also from earth. It then layers it on top of heart intelligence, which I believe is wildly untapped. And Joe Dispenza talks about this through heart math and some of the other, really powerful modalities that are out there. But I think that there's so much more there. And then we layer it on top of the intelligence of the nervous system. And if you can tune into the vibrations of both your heartbeat and your nervous system, and then it actually typically doesn't come only through the palms, it comes through the fingertips, which makes it more precise. So you can use it, think about, I call myself a energetic surgeon sometimes. Think about the tools that a surgeon has to do their work, right? Well, if all I have is like a meat cleaver, it's only one big, channel of energy through the palm, through my hand chakras. Well, I can do a lot of good energizing with that, but I really need more precision in my work in order to get to some of the smaller places, especially with the heart intelligence and the nervous system. So the layering of all of those three, the consciousness of the chi, and then heart intelligence, and then the nervous system intelligence, makes it, I believe, significantly more intelligent. And there's also an added layer of energetic cleansing that we do. Just like if you were going to go in for surgery or any kind of checkup with the doctor, we clear out the chakra first and work with the energetic residue to get it out of the body before we begin to energize and start to adjust. Because if there's, like there's a wound on your body, we don't want to just spread the infection everywhere by blasting it with energy, right? We want to clean and clear the wound, then start the energizing and healing process. So that's a short description of what makes Neuro-Reiki quite different. And I would say, for me, a little more efficient and effective.
And can you do that remotely?
Oh, yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. Energy doesn't know time or space. So it really travels anywhere. The limitation is really just the focus and the intention of both your visualization, your mind. And actually I say I will clarify that, because sometimes people aren't necessarily visualizing. They may not be using clairvoyance. They may be using clairsentience. So as long as you can tune in through one of your clairs, clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, and you can focus and remain focused on your subject, regardless of where they are in the world, you can do it at any time, any place. It could even be for people or beings that don't exist physically on the planet anymore.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And I've seen, I don't know if you've seen it, there's people on TikTok, of all places, who do that kind of stuff. Like you can see them, they're like grabbing, I don't know if they're legit or not, but they're like grabbing the energy kind of stuff and,
Oh, yeah.
doing that.
I've seen it. I actually think, just like anything, whatever you choose to believe has the ability to be reality, And if you tune into that person and their movements draw you in, right? And you are connecting to the energy of it and you're like, oh, I can now start to feel what they're doing in my body. Great. Then the likelihood is it's working in some possible way. I tell a lot of my clients, I'm like, press the I believe button. All of this work takes a level of faith that it absolutely could be true. But if you're tuning into someone and you're like, yeah, you know what, like your energy just doesn't do it for me, then move on, right? Like the good thing about TikTok is like swipe up.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
keep swiping until you find the facilitator, the guide, the person who resonates with your energetic frequency. Because also frequencies have to match. And this is one of the challenges of, I think, being so wide and so accessible or sharing it with lots and lots of people is there's going to be many, many, many different people where it does not resonate. And so the frequencies, kind of the waves hit each other and they're just repelled, right? But there will be those individuals, and social media is a great platform for it. There will be those individuals who just fully click into your frequency and are like, yes, like give me more.
It's and right now, Susannah, it almost feels like you're reading my mind because, like I wanted to talk to you about energy for a little bit. In this podcast, I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people from around the world, some who are now some of my best friends. And many people have said
can I be one of those people later?
Absolutely, 100%. Now, a lot of people have said to me that it's an experience, that when they sit down with me, time and space stops. And it's just like they go to a whole other place. And it's like you're in the same room, but you're on the other side of the planet. And energetically, we become one. It's like we're on the same mission together and we totally get it. And for some people, they don't get it. And others, it's just like, and that's why I know they're my people. And I read someone's energy when I invite them to the show before I've even met them. Like when I see your photo, I read your energy and I go, yep. Like I just know. And so that's what happened with you, Susannah. And I can see that I was bang on as usual.
Oh, Bindi, this is super cool. I actually wanted to share something with you because your energy has been coming through to me for the last week.
Really?
And I hadn't even listened to some of your podcasts and I hadn't heard some of the taglines you had, but I started a business. My very first business I started was a nonprofit, and the tagline was "Be the Change." And in this last week, that motto, that mantra, kept coming through to me as I was driving, and I was like, I wonder, do we add that into Metamorphosis? Is that something what is it about Be the Change that's so important to me this week? And then I started listening to your content, and I was like, oh, Bindi's here, Bindi's with me. So the flow and the resonance, you absolutely have that, and I've felt it already. And I would say when you speak about time and space stopping, there's a spaciousness about you that is almost cosmic. There's a cosmic, spacious energy that allows people to get really, really, really big and to be the biggest, most magnificent versions of themselves. I feel bigger than my physical body right now in your presence. So that is such a gift to have. And it's a gift that you then draw out of other people in the world. So that's one reason as we started, I was like, I just want to thank you for what you do because you do it well.
Oh, thank you so much. And I have had a lot of people say I'm great at holding space. And that can sometimes be hard for some people to do because if your ego gets in the way, it won't work.
The act of holding space really is holding a container, right? And as guides, whether it's a guide on a podcast or a guide with psychedelic medicine, holding that container means that you have the opportunity to create where the boundaries are. And sometimes it's about knowing exactly where that person needs the boundaries. And to do that, it's a very subtle, very conscious effort to really give them the exact sort of size. What size room do you need for your journey today? And I think you do a beautiful job. And you've obviously found other individuals who desire and want that spaciousness that you create. And you're going to keep drawing that toward you. And I think you and I were definitely in 5D already having whole conversations and already recorded podcasts in the future.
We finally caught up with ourselves.
That's right.
People listening, if you could pick up this energy, I swear we would bottle it. Now,
I've had full body chills since we got on the call. Like the whole time. It's just like waves.
it's incredible. Now, back to you, enough of me. Metamorphosis. Tell us exactly what you do when you work with people.
So, oh man, Metamorphosis, as the name suggests, even the organization itself is evolving all the time. We're an agency of change, right? That's what we do.
Hello.
Surprise. And we want to encourage people to really embrace the concept of change because it's the only constant thing that's going to happen in your life. And you're going to continue to have these moments of transformation in your life. Even like, I think of archetypal shifts from maiden to mother, and then mother to crone, and prince to father and provider and king, and then into sage, right? So there's like lifetime shifts that happen, and then there are career shifts, like on the 3D, right? You've got the career shifts, you've got the shifts in your relationships, things like that. So we tend to come into people's lives when they're going through some kind of personal transformation, whatever that may be. And then we have a particular method called the Metamorphosis Method that focuses on, it gives you an entire, just like we were talking about a container, a space within which you can have some structure around your transformation. And the Metamorphosis Method is really this process of beginning with preparation. And that can look like, what's cool about this method is it can literally be applied on every layer of your life. It can be applied in your relationships. It can be applied to your career. But at Metamorphosis, what we do with our retreats, for example, is we prepare people for 4 weeks before the retreat. So they have a coach, and they connect with that coach one-on-one. And also they begin to connect with their cohort. There's also preparation, online, virtual programs. And then there's the experience. And that's the actual thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's like we are now going into, quote unquote, a peak experience. And that is usually a 4 to 5 day retreat, which can both happen across the United States. We also host them in Costa Rica. And the likelihood is they will be expanded beyond that into other countries as time goes on. We have a strangely big European contingent that's like coming on board right now. So that's great. And then after the experience, which is only one piece of the method, right? That's only one part, even though people like to kind of cling to the experience itself. Actually, it's in the integration and that after that post-integration in which we find people make the most changes, especially if they remain disciplined and they have the courage to go back into their day-to-day lives and actually make real, tangible 3D change. And they continue with their coach. And then they will also have group support. And we find that, the cohorts that go through these get so tight because you have had such a powerful experience together, such a life-changing journey. And I'll say also in the experience part, you are sitting with medicine. We also do this with our coaching programs where you have a virtual experience, and typically there's like microdosing in that process. And we kind of blend the preparation, experience, and integration all together. But there is like a 3-phase journey that you go through. And in the integration piece, we are big believers because we're all women. We're the matriarchs of Metamorphosis. We're big believers in community and how powerful healing and community can be. And so we've built a community of many, many hundreds of people who now stay in touch and have different programs that allow them to stay connected and to support each other through continued transformation in their lives. So you don't just like drop off and run away or stop getting support. We actually continue to support you through integration calls, monthly integration calls pretty much in perpetuity. And we also have a membership program where people can continue to dive deeper and attend virtual masterclasses led by our affiliate network of facilitators and experts. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but you know, a big piece to us is the integration. Like, if you're not prepared for the experience and then you have the experience and then you don't integrate it, then what was the experience for? And we see this happen over and over and over again. All of the founders and many of the members of our community have experienced containers and psychedelic experiences that were incomplete and didn't fully ground into their real lives. And they were just like shot off into space without having that real, tangible metamorphosis. And that's what we want to help people actually do.
Again, fascinating. And for the people that you've seen go through that process, what kind of change have they seen in their lives?
It is like, this is my favorite part, because when I see the changes visually and actually talk to the changes, it's like, what? I just found out that one of our clients from last year's retreat, one of our retreats last year, lost 25 pounds within like 6 months of the retreat. That wasn't like even a goal of hers, but she just said the weight fell off. We've had people, and I say, I have to stop telling potential clients for like our Powerful Purpose program, which is a virtual microdosing program, that like some of them are a little afraid of how much change might happen. They're like, am I going to have to like, sell all my stuff and move to India? And I'm like, no, at first in the early days, I was like, no. And now like 3 people have done something like that.
That's pretty radical.
Yes, they've like moved to India or Thailand or Colombia. They've gone on journeys and experienced the world and sold a lot of their belongings and started over again. So I have to be like, well, that is an option, but if it's not what you want, then that doesn't have to be your answer. So people have, a lot of our clients have left jobs, careers that they did not enjoy and were not feeding their soul, started soul-aligned businesses. We have dozens of examples of people who left their corporate careers and then started a spiritually aligned business doing their passion successfully. And that's sort of a byproduct. We don't even have like a business course or anything for it. It's just like, this is what happens. And then I would say, oh man, well, we had a journalist came to us and wrote an article about us in Inc. magazine for entrepreneurs and things like that. And within 5 days of working with us through the retreat and of course the preparation phase of cracking the chrysalis, which is our leadership retreat, he healed lifelong back pain and just gone, completely gone. Because we were able to kind of remove some energy that had been stuck in his body and clear it out. And he came back to his family pain-free, which he had not experienced in decades. And we hear stories about that and experience that often. I would say, close to 50 to 60% of people who come to us have some sort of physical ailment or physical pain. And the vast majority of those individuals, and I'm also working, just so you know, on the actual data and the statistics of this so that we can track these results. But a huge percentage, the majority of those individuals walk away with at least alleviated physical pain and also sometimes completely ending that particular pain in their body altogether. So autoimmune diseases have completely healed. We've watched stage 4 cancer heal through this work. My sister's life was saved through this work. She stopped trying to kill herself after 2 ceremonies with us. And I would say healed a huge portion of her borderline personality disorder and is now like living a beautiful life with a partner she loves. So yeah, radical changes, absolutely radical changes.
Yeah, and it all makes sense to me because, I'm someone who has spent years doing healing through sound healing. And for me, that has got rid of so much pain that I had in my body as well. But really, a lot of our physical pain comes from emotional pain. And and this is where traditional medicine really bothers me, that it really needs to look broader than, big pharma for solutions, because we can find a permanent solution here that isn't going to be a harmful one.
You are speaking words to my soul, Bindi. Yes. While I have come to some terms with understanding why there are pharmaceuticals needed in people's lives at certain stages, SSRIs, antidepressants, things like that. I do understand why some of these things are needed. And, medicines like ketamine are technically pharmaceuticals and are now being used for sort of psychedelic healing. So there is goodness there. And what I have seen of the medical industry, and I am actually kind of surrounded by doctors. My partner's whole family are doctors. My older brother is a doctor, like a lot of doctors around me, is that they completely don't recognize that there is anything beyond like the mental layer of existence. So there is no energetic and spiritual. And like you said, the emotional is there a little bit, and it's spoken about psychologically, but it's separate. It's in like, oh, you just go to therapy for that. And so Metamorphosis, we work on all four layers: body, heart, mind, and spirit. Because if you don't work on all four layers at the same time, then completion doesn't happen. Whatever the pattern is, whatever the addiction is, that's also another thing that we see healed through this work. Addiction, whatever the typically it starts in the energetic field, in the spiritual belief system, in what I think is good for me. Sometimes it's past life things, sometimes it's beyond that. And then slowly but surely, I would say it goes from like 5-dimension, like energy, pure energy. And then slowly but surely we attract it to us in physical form. And then by the time it hits the physical layer, it metastasizes into some sort of either tumor or disease or virus that is the physical manifestation of whatever this belief system is. And that it goes through all four layers of our being. So without focusing on all of those, and I would say that we're in a society now where more people are doing multifaceted approaches for their trauma, right? They'll go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. They'll also go to their family care doctor. And then they will also, do some maybe community healing. Maybe they'll be doing yoga or working out at the gym. But still, all of that is very separate from each other. And they're not holistic and not integrated. So we do believe in integrative, holistic work to be able to fully complete patterns. And you can actually do it like that. Like it can be done. So yeah, I appreciate that you believe that and that you are continuing to use your voice to share more about what else is possible.
Absolutely. And the thing I love that you guys do as well is the perpetuity of the relationship that you have with someone in that healing. You don't just set them free and hope they'll be all right. You actually, because healing's a constant thing. It's an evolving thing, right? It's not a one and done. It's something you continually need to invest in if you want to be a fully functioning human. And so you need to continue your journey. It doesn't just stop there.
And also when we move through the healing phase and we're like, okay, I actually feel like I'm now thriving. I feel like I have abundance in my life. I feel like I have the emotional and mental resources to care for others and to care for myself. at that point, then people typically want activation. They want to be activated into their dharma and into their purpose. And we have programs for that too. I'm like, the human life continues, right? Like once you move through whatever the wound is, that typically is like your karmic lesson or your samskara, the core wound that's going to drive you to focus on this one thing, then we get to turn it inside out or turn it over. And the other side of that is your purpose. And at that point, you get to activate into the blessing of who you are. So it tells me that that's what you've done, Bindi, right? Is you have turned a lot of that trauma, a lot of that pain that you may have experienced through the healing process now, which may have happened around your throat, right? And your words and how you share your voice in the world, into this beautiful, purposeful space for yourself and others. So
it's like my full story. What's going on here?
It's a guess. We're tuning into each other.
One thing that came into my mind before when you were talking about the experiences that people had and the results that they had was I wondered whether during those journeys that they have, whether they're getting messages on what their purpose should be and what they should be doing, because that's how this all came about for me. So I wonder, do they get the same thing?
1000%. Yes. The answer is yes to that. When people are ready to receive their purpose, it will just be delivered. And that's why I call it remembered, right? Because it's already there. It's there the entire time. And this kind of takes us right back to the very beginning when we were talking about layers. Because after we've done all the shedding of the different layers, layer by layer by layer, of the pain and the hurt and the different parts of ourselves that were harmed, we get to that essence of who we are and why we came here. And I do believe that each individual has a purpose, and each lifetime there's a mission that we have that is related to that overall purpose. And you don't really have to do anything at all to have it. It is your birthright. All you have to do is strip away all the things that were keeping your filters a little dirty so you couldn't fully see what we call the true abundant essence of you.
Well, the story is, Susannah, that I had a vision after a meditation. I'm now also a meditation teacher, where I had the vision for what I do now. And the logo you see behind me was actually in that vision, and I created it from that. And so the idea was that this would become a franchise, and it would be places around the world that people could go to get healing or to create content to spread their message and find their voice, and then go about their magic in the day. And these spaces would have, places where they could meditate, they could get healing, all kinds of different stuff, create content to share with the world, and that was it. And so I've been doing it for 5 years now, and we've had a few different evolutions, but
as they do.
Yeah, but that was a vision, and to the point where I even had the floor plan for a commercial premises on paper, the whole team, the whole fully complete.
Oh.
And when you get that, it's like it's so in flow that it's just effortless. It's just you are the channel. You are just the channel.
I love this, Bindi, because these moments of realization and what you've seen to be able to create in the bigness of that, right? Sometimes people do hide from their purpose as well, right? Because they're they're either like, oh no, that's not what, what society says I should do. That's not what I had in mind. That's not my expectation. Chances are whatever your purpose is going to surprise you in some way. That's what's so great about them. And you listening in the way that you did at the precision that you did, where you were like, I'm going to listen to all of this so that I can really put it down on paper and allow this vision to be as big as it needs to be. That also speaks to your spaciousness, right? So you're like, okay, this is like, these are sites around the world. This is going to touch millions of people. This is huge. And to not be afraid of that and to not turn away from that, props, like mad props.
And like all of the messaging that you were talking about, the whole lot, all of it channeled. Like it's like I have no part in it. And it's like I just, as you've seen through just chatting with me, I get these messages as we talk. And I'm like, okay, we need to talk about this now.
And that's the vessel piece, right? So I do believe that we are coming into the golden age. Part of my purpose is to be a voice for a prophecy that I carry that really is like a prophecy of good hope, of good faith, that our planet is going to be a place of santosha, of contentment. And that part of that process is coming into the golden age and creating balance between the masculine and the feminine, and both in our own bodies and then with each other. And the arrival of the feminine has reminded us that we are just vessels. That's it. We're just these sacred chalices for spirit that can then radiate outward through our heart, through all of our energy centers, and actually through our physical hands, so we can actually make the thing, right? And that's what you're doing. You are being the vessel for that message. And I can feel how dedicated you are to that. And to me, devotion that's my number one favorite virtue, quality, value. That's it, devotion. Because if you have devotion to something that means something to your heart and your soul, you'll always be happy, satisfied, purposeful.
And, I recently did a public speaking gig, and I realized through that experience that the era I'm in now, if we're going to talk Taylor Swift, the era I am in now is I'm using my healing to heal others. So, and people will know that I recently put out a meditation album, so people can now use that in their healing. So, shameless plug, you can get it anywhere online. But
I want that. I want that album.
And funnily enough, it's called Sourced by Spirit. So there you go.
Well, that is what we need more of. So thank you for putting that out. And that's going to be the soundtrack of my meditations for the next couple weeks.
Now, Susannah, I was talking about your sexy website before. If people want to go and check it out, what's the address?
Sexy, such a good word. Yes, it is www.metamorphosis, which is metamorphosis. I sometimes have to sound it out in my head, .ventures. And you can get to any of our courses, our coaching. You can connect with our facilitators there. You can also look up all of our retreats and all of our virtual master classes and programs as well.
Yeah, go and check it out. It's a really nice site. Now, got the last big question for you. What's the change you'd like to see in the world, and how can we bring it to life?
I want to see us integrate shadow and light to understand that the darkness is no better, no more scary, no worse than the light, that it is all one. And it all comes from the same place. And if we can accept that, then we can accept and honor all of ourselves, all of the parts of ourselves, which means we can honor and accept all the parts of each other.
Wow, mind blown. Susannah, I think the world tilted a little bit today. Thank you everyone for hanging out with Susannah and I and being part of the change on the ethical evolution.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Ethical Evolution podcast. If you're ready to be the change and would love to work with me on finding your voice through spiritual coaching or creating your own podcast with impact, visit ethicalchangeagency.com. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's growing every day with great content and highlights you may not have heard on the podcast. In addition, please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or Apple, and why not leave a 5-star review? If you're not following me on social media, you can find me at Ethical Change Agency on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, and at DJ Bindi on TikTok and Instagram. If you're interested in diving deeper into the ethical evolution with me, I've created a membership program that allows me to bring you more in-depth exclusive content without relying on paid ads. My goal is to deliver members way more value than the cost of the subscription. Benefits include Ask Me Anything episodes. I've interviewed hundreds of people from around the world, so imagine what you could ask. Access exclusive bonus content only for members that focuses on the downloads I get through my conversations that include actionable tips. Support Ethical Change Agency and the Ethical Evolution podcast on its mission to amplify change makers who make the world a better place. Access to global connections who can help you make greater impact in the world. Meditate with me and discounted spiritual coaching or podcast consulting with me at 15% off. That value alone pays for your membership. For only $7 a month or $70 a year, you can access all these benefits of an Ethical Evolution Emergence membership. If you want to learn more and access these benefits, head on over to ethicalchangeagency.com.
Hi everyone, I'm Geraldine Glass, a leader in the field of music as medicine, and I'm excited to share with you my newest release of healing sound, Pentatonic Visions, with Chris Scholler and Electrocast Records. Immerse yourself in ethereal realms where the harmonies of nature, tribal rhythms, and soundscapes blend with the crystal singing bowls. It's out now, streaming on all platforms.
Ever thought about starting your own podcast?
Do you have a business or a message you want to share with the world?
Well, now it's easier than ever with Electrocast. Hi, I'm Mark Netter.
And I'm Peter Rafelson. We're the founders of Electrocast Media.
Whether you want to start a new podcast or already have one, join Electrocast to grow your audience, monetize your content, and build your community.
With our simple sign-up, you get free promotion, world-class analytics, premium ads, and personal support.
Go to electrocast.com and join our community today.
Electrocast. Transform your influence.
Electrocast. Electrocast.